Warren Buffett says, taking a job you hate for the money is like saving sex for old age. The science actually proves him right, and the mechanism is worse than you think. The higher the salary that pulled you in, the more efficiently it dismantles your ability to ever perform at the level that would have earned you more. This content is for educational purposes only and does not constitute financial or career advice. What follows is an analysis of peer-reviewed research, military field data, and behavioral economics, and its implications are worth sitting with carefully. If this kind of rigorous, uncomfortable thinking is what you come here for, your presence in this community matters. Share your core investment philosophy in the comments. The reasoning people bring here sharpens the conversation for everyone. Subscribing.
It is a documented, repeatable, measurable phenomenon. And if you chose your career for the salary, it is already running inside you. In the 1970s, psychologist Edward Deci ran a simple experiment. He gave two groups of students the same puzzle, the Soma Cube. One group was paid to solve it, the other was not. Then he removed the reward. During free time, the paid group barely touched the puzzle. The unpaid group kept going. The money had not increased their engagement. It had replaced it. This is the overjustification effect. When an external reward is introduced for an activity you already find interesting, your brain recategorizes the activity. It stops being something you do. It becomes something you are compensated for. The shift is subtle, but the consequences are not. A meta-analysis of 128 separate studies conducted by Deci, Kostner, and Ryan confirmed the effect is real, consistent, and measurable. The effect size? D equals negative 0.34. Statistically significant.
Psychologically devastating. What does that number mean in practice? It means that material rewards reliably and substantially undermine intrinsic motivation. Not sometimes, not in weak personalities, across 128 studies. Here is the cognitive architecture behind it. Your brain tracks why you do things. When the answer shifts from because I find it meaningful to because I am paid, something fundamental changes. You stop experiencing yourself as the author of your effort. You become a responder to a stimulus. The work no longer belongs to you. It belongs to whoever is signing the check. And responders to stimuli do not innovate. They do not persist through difficulty. They do not build the compounding expertise that separates the highly paid.
It is also wrong. West Point tested it rigorously across 14 years with 11,320 cadets. Researcher Amy Wrzesniewski and her colleagues tracked every cadet who entered the U.S. military academy. They measured two types of motivation at entry: internal, wanting to serve, to grow, to master the craft of military leadership, and instrumental, wanting the free education, the prestigious resume line, the future salary. They then tracked career outcomes across 4 metrics: completing the academy, receiving an officer's commission, re-enlisting beyond the minimum required term, and receiving an early promotion. Cadets with strong internal motivation performed well, consistently across all 4 measures. That result was expected. The unexpected result was
Significantly worse across every single career metric. The instrumental motive did not add to the internal one. It competed with it. It diluted it. It introduced a second governing question: what am I getting from this? That fractured the singular focus required for elite performance. The authors stated their conclusion plainly: helping people focus on the meaning and impact of their work, rather than the financial returns, is counterintuitively the best way to improve not only the quality of their work, but their financial outcomes. Now,
consider what this means if you chose your career primarily for the salary. You did not simply make a lifestyle trade-off. You activated a cognitive mechanism that is now actively working against the quality of your output, and therefore against the compounding of your long-term earnings. Daniel Kahneman and Matthew Killingsworth reached a related conclusion from a different direction.
In 2023, the two researchers, who had previously published contradictory findings on income and happiness, ran an adversarial collaboration. They pooled their data and resolved the disagreement together. What they found was not a simple line. It was a trap door. Money only reliably amplifies happiness for people who are already happy. For the bottom 20%, those living with chronic stress, depression, or existential emptiness, income helps until roughly $100,000 per year. Then it stops working entirely. The person who chose a miserable job for the paycheck has entered the precise psychological category where more money produces the least return. The salary grows, the suffering compounds. The cognitive engine required to earn more degrades with every passing quarter. And here is what that research could not have anticipated. The economy itself has just changed the terms.
The structural hiding places that once made this trade-off survivable, the high salary, low engagement roles where a disengaged worker could coast, are being systematically eliminated. Not slowly, not gently. The psychological trap we exposed in Chapter 1 does not stay in your head. It migrates into the economy, and the economy punishes it. In the first months of 2026 alone, more than 100,000 technology jobs were eliminated globally. Not outsourced, not restructured. Eliminated. These were not failing companies cutting costs. These were the most profitable corporations in human history making a calculated trade. They were swapping disengaged human labor for machine precision. Consider what Meta did. The company fired 8,000.
While those cuts were being processed, Meta installed mouse tracking and screenshot software on the computers of the employees who remained. Their keystrokes and cursor movements were being captured and fed directly into the AI systems being built to replace them. Read that again. The surviving workers were training their own replacements, and they were being paid to do it. Ask yourself an honest question. Which worker was most likely to be in that group of 8,000? The one who spent a decade mastering the craft because they loved the problem? Or the one who chose the role for the salary and did precisely what the job description required? The market does not use the language of motivation science, but it has reached the same conclusion. Algorithmic, disengaged work is being automated. Engaged, adaptive, creative work is being bid up.
Look not at Silicon Valley, but at Ukraine, a country simultaneously experiencing a labor crisis unlike anything a peacetime economy has ever produced. Ukraine's civilian workforce shrank by between 18 and 28%, up to 3.5 million workers removed from the productive economy. You would expect mass unemployment, desperate workers accepting any wage, employers with leverage. The opposite happened. Unemployment sits at 11 to 15.5%, and 68% of Ukrainian industrial enterprises rank labor shortage as their single greatest obstacle. Greater than physical danger, greater than energy blackouts, greater than destroyed infrastructure. This is not a typo. Record unemployment and record labor shortage existing at the same time in the same country. How? Because the workers who disappeared were not. It needs people who actually know what they are doing and care enough to keep learning. The wage data makes this visible. Between 2021 and 2025, Ukrainian IT salaries rose 159%. Finance sector salaries rose 122%,
These are not adjustments for inflation. These are markets screaming for competence. 159% in 4 years. In a country at war, with a shrinking workforce and rolling blackouts. The premium for genuine skill does not disappear in a crisis. It accelerates. What the Ukraine paradox reveals is a universal law dressed in extreme conditions. When labor supply collapses, the market does not distribute wages equally across all remaining workers. It concentrates rewards at the top, among those whose performance cannot be automated, cannot be faked, and cannot be replicated by someone clocking hours without conviction.
Cadets with strong intrinsic motivation and no financial motive outperformed those with both motivations combined. The mercenary worker does not just earn less satisfaction, they produce less. And now, for the first time in history, the labor market has the tools to see it and the incentive to act on it. AI does not eliminate jobs randomly. It eliminates the work that can be reduced to a repeatable sequence of steps, the work performed by people who never internalized the deeper problem, who showed up for the deposit, not the discipline. Think about what that means structurally. Every company in the world is now running a quiet audit. Which of our people do things because they understand why those things matter, and which of them are...
The second group is being replaced by a model that costs less, works faster, and never asks for a raise. This is not a soft conversation about finding your passion. This is a structural economic sorting event. The mercenary worker, the one Chapter 1 warned you about, is not just unfulfilled. They are being systematically deleted from the ledger. The market has already decided. The culling is not coming. It is already underway. And the only thing more dangerous than being on the wrong side of it is having no financial ground to stand on when the decision arrives. So the market is sorting. The mercenary workers are being cut. The engaged specialists are being paid more than ever. You understand the trap. You understand the stakes. Now comes the only question that actually matters. What do you do on Monday morning? Here is the first thing most people get wrong about career change. They sit down. They think. They try to reason their way into a new identity.
They ask themselves, who am I, really? What do I truly want? And they get nowhere. Because that is not how identity works. Professor Hermidia Ibarra at London Business School spent years studying how people successfully reinvent their careers. Her central finding is counterintuitive. Identity does not come before action, it comes from action. You do not think your way into a new self. You act your way into one. Ibarra calls this testing possible selves. Not committing, not quitting, testing. You run small, low-cost experiments in the real world. You take on a side project. You teach a workshop. You consult for one.
You are acting to produce clarity. The sequence matters enormously. Stanford professors Bill Burnett and Dave Evans built an entire course around this principle. It became one of the most popular classes in Stanford's history. Then they wrote the book Designing Your Life. Their core tool is called the 3 Odyssey Plans. Here is how it works. You do not write one career plan. You write 3. The first plan is your current path, optimized. You stay in your field and make the best possible version of what you were already doing. The second plan is your alternative, what you would do if your current field vanished tomorrow. The third plan is your dream, what you would pursue if money and status played no role in the decision. Most people never write the third plan. They stop at...
It makes the invisible visible. It converts vague dissatisfaction into a structured set of testable hypotheses. But here is where most frameworks fail. They give you tools for thinking, They do not give you a tool for deciding. Because when the moment comes, when the alternative is real and the cost is real, thinking is not enough. You need a different kind of mental architecture entirely. Jeff Bezos built his. In 1994, he was a senior vice president at D.E. Shaw, one of the most sophisticated quantitative hedge funds in the world. He had a high salary, a prestigious title, and a clear upward path. Then he read the statistic that the internet was growing at 2,300% per year. And he stopped. Bezos did not make a spreadsheet. He did not run a risk analysis.
The answer was immediate. Absolutely yes. He left D.E. Shaw within months. He drove to Seattle and built Amazon in his garage. The regret minimization framework works because it defeats the short-term loss aversion that freezes most people. Your brain in 2026 is terrified of losing the salary, the title, the status. Your brain at 80 has a completely different calculus. It does not care about the salary you protected. It cares about the life you did not build. Bezos simply borrowed his 80-year-old mind's judgment and applied it today. But none of these frameworks address the one thing that makes experimentation survivable. You cannot run parallel experiments without financial runway. You cannot test possible selves if a single missed paycheck destroys your ability to pay rent. The psychological architecture is complete. The structural foundation is still missing. Every
3 to 6 months of living expenses sitting in an instrument that is working for you while you work on the transition. The instrument matters as much as the amount. Because if your savings are losing value to inflation, your runway is shrinking every month, even when you are not spending it. Ukrainian government bonds, OVDPs, currently yield between 15 and 17.8% annually in hryvnias. The National Bank of Ukraine forecasts 2026 inflation at 6.6%. That means the real yield, the return above inflation, sits between 7 and 10%. Your savings are not just preserving purchasing power, they are compounding above it. Now, consider what you are avoiding by holding OVDPs instead of a standard bank deposit. Bank deposits in Ukraine are subject to an 18% income tax and a 1.5% military levy on interest earned. OVDPs are fully exempt.
It is a structural advantage that compounds across the full holding period. The barrier to entry is 1,000 hryvnias. At current exchange rates, that is approximately $27. These instruments are 100% guaranteed by the Ukrainian state. They are not a speculative position. They are not a bet. They are a savings instrument with a defined yield, a defined maturity, and zero credit risk relative to the issuing authority. This content is for educational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Here is what this means practically. The paycheck from the job you currently endure, the job you took for the salary, is not your enemy. It is raw material. Directed with discipline into tax-free instruments yielding 7 to 10% above inflation.
You do not need to love your current job. You need to use it. Every month that paycheck arrives, a portion converts into runway capital. The runway gives you time. Time gives you the ability to run experiments. Experiments produce data. Data produces clarity. Clarity makes the Bezos question answerable. That is the full architecture. The people who successfully reinvent their careers do not wait until they hate their situation badly enough to leap blindly. They build a platform before they jump. The platform is financial. The jumps are small and experimental. The accumulation of small jumps produces the new identity. This is not inspiration. It is engineering. Most people experience their paycheck as a leash, a monthly confirmation that they belong to someone else's priorities. But a leash and a rope are made of the same material. The difference is what you attach the other end to. Your current paycheck
invested with discipline into tax-free instruments yielding 7 to 10% above inflation, is not a prison sentence. It is the capital that buys your next life. The cage has a door. The key is already in your hand. The only question is whether you will spend that capital or invest it.